Hi everyone, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling, and on this episode I'm going to go through my Van Halen CD collection. Nothing rare about collecting Van Halen CDs. I mean, all of their albums went, at least gold. Even Van Halen 3 went gold, so there's nothing particularly rare. I just want to go over the versions that I have, so we'll get started with the first Van Halen album, all-time classic back to '78. This is just a Canadian edition on Warner Brothers. It's not a reissue or anything. Not a lot needs to be said about this album. It was an all-time classic, although I will point out it's the only one where David Lee Roth is just simply listed as David Roth, which doesn't quite have the same ring to it, of course, as the CD itself, the back cover of the insert, and this is what's inside of it, which is about all the credits that were inside the original album, too. It was pretty sparse for credits. The first Van Halen CD I ever had, I got in 1991 after I had a CD player, or at least there was one in the house. And it was this one, Van Halen 2. This is just a US edition on Warner Brothers. And the first thing I noticed about this is because I had the cassette before that, and for some reason, at least the Canadian cassette, I haven't looked at an American one, side 1 and side 2 are flipped. So yeah, I don't know why they did that. I guess it proves that, it's a good album no matter what order the songs are in, but it is kind of weird that it's not how they intended it. CD just looks like the regular Warner Brothers CDs at the time, and a little bit of a write-up on the back insert here about the first album and leading up to the second one. In black and white anyway, reprinting some of the pictures that were done. Now, if you don't know the story, I'll share it with you. There's David Lee Roth doing one of his patented splits on the back cover. Apparently he landed wrong, which is why he's being tended to by some nurses here, and his leg is in a cast. Supposedly that's a real story. It could have been concocted for publicity purposes. It wouldn't surprise me, but it's fun anyway. Third one is the first of the Van Halen reissues that I have. I had the original ones, but I bought a lot of CDs, like an actual lot, from eBay to get a couple I didn't have, and it had the reissued ones, so I made sure my old ones found homes. Women and Children First, the third Van Halen album. Front cover, back cover. Now inside the original album, which I don't have this came with this poster of David Lee Roth chained up, and the little bit of credits that came with it. The CDs were remastered in 2000, only the first 6, of course. Heaven forbid they touch the Hagar years. So they don't look all that different, just a little bit more detail. And my coworker Eric went to a ton of concerts when he was younger. He's older than I am, and he's from Fort Wayne, Indiana. So this is a ticket stub from a gig he went to at Fort Wayne at the Memorial Coliseum, July 12th, 1980, which is pretty cool. What was the ticket price? Let's see, is the ticket price on here? $7.50 to go see Van Halen in 1980. You couldn't even buy a coffee mug for $7.50 at a show. Now you'd be lucky to buy a keychain. Okay, so the next one I'm going to show you is, my friend Matt thinks I'm crazy, my favorite of the David Lee Roth albums, my favorite of the original 6, Fair Warning, which came out in 1981. I adore this album to pieces. I just love it. I've played it so many times. I just love it. It's the shortest album, but to me it's the best, not a wasted second. This is also a reissue. Of course, I had the original as well. Now, I took it upon myself here. Hold on, we'll just get this out here, the front and back cover. Very unique artwork on here. Was inspired by actually a Canadian artist named William Kurelek. And these are images based on something he did called The Maze. And I went and looked it up online, printed it up into a CD-sized cover. So I keep that in the front of my Fair Warning CD. So it's got the images that Van Halen used are just mixed ones. And apparently, Alex Van Halen initially just wanted to use this image of the guy hitting his head against the brick wall, but they used a series of images from The Maze for it. There's lyrics to Mean Street Wrong, and the photo that was on the inner sleeve of the record. I love this album, and you cannot convince me otherwise. So yeah, if you were just to grab this CD out of my collection, you might think it had a unique special edition cover to it, but no, I simply printed it off just so you get the full effect. It would look cool on vinyl, I think, too. The next one is another remaster, Diver Down. I like this album cover for its simplicity. There's the photo that was on the inner sleeve and the other side of that sleeve, reprinted here. That's kind of one thing the original CDs didn't have. Next up is the first Van Halen album I owned. I owned it on cassette originally, 1984, of course. This is a Canadian Columbia House issue. It's not a reissue. This was probably the first CD a lot of people had by Van Halen. Iconic album, not just for them, but in the 80s in general. I have never figured out what are these. I don't know what they are. It's pods or something. Okay, next, the first Sammy Hagar album with Van Halen 5150. And my CD is just a regular US copy on Warner Brothers. These Hagar CDs have never been remastered, which is odd for albums that were all multi-platinum, but such is the Van Halen's disdain for Hagar in recent years that they've just turned their back on this period, which is unfortunate. There's the CD itself. And the back cover. Photo of the band. This was the first CD that had lyrics in it. And up until this point, Van Halen had not done any home videos, which is rare for a band of their stature, but they did put out a VHS tape in 1987 from the 5150 tour, Live Without a Net. This is the DVD reissue, which I got at Evergreen Traders. Much Music used to show this on Saturday nights. An edited version of it is one of their big ticket concerts. So I'd seen most of it, but not all of it. It's basically all, I think it's got all of 5150 on here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 out of the 9 songs. Very little older stuff. There's Panama, Ain't Talking About Love. They do Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll. They do Sammy Hagar's There's Only One Way to Rock. That opens the show, which is very cool. I Can't Drive 55. Anyway, this is Live Without a Net. I don't think it made it to Blu-ray. And that's the disc itself. They didn't put that out in audio form as an album, but I just thought it fits there. Next one, the next CD is interesting. 1988 was the first Van Halen album I bought new. OU812. This is a US copy on Warner Brothers. Now, when this originally came out, CDs were, I won't say they were just starting to gain popularity, but the record companies were really adamant about making this the primary music medium for consumers. And to do that, to get people to buy CDs as opposed to records or cassettes, they put an extra song on the CD. This was one of the first ones that I was aware of that had an extra song on it, and it was the last song, cover of Little Feat's Apolitical Blues, which was the B-side of Black and Blue. So for many years I didn't hear that song. I'd never heard it. I did find the single to Black and Blue and heard it, and then I eventually got this on CD. And this is when they began that annoying tradition of putting the song titles on the back in alphabetical order as opposed to the order they actually appear on the album. There's the CD itself. This album brings back a lot of good memories right at the beginning of summer, pretty much at the beginning of summer of '88. And all the lyrics inside this too. Lyrics are even alphabetical, so following along, never mind. It's overrated. Now, my favorite Van Halen album, not just of the Hagar years, but period, is this, 1991, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. I absolutely love this album. This is it's a US edition. I think this is a fantastic album. This is the first time one of the CDs had any sort of customization to it, aside from the way that perhaps the title was written. I've gone on and on about how much I like this album many, many times before. Again, like any album that I call a favorite, there's no wasted space on it whatsoever. Van Halen's first official live album they put out as an album came out in 1993, and it's called Right Here, Right Now. It's a long album. It originally came out on even 2 cassettes. So first, this is the front cover. It's a single insert by itself. This is a Canadian Columbia House version. I think I had recently joined Columbia House, and this just happened to be the selection of the month, which is something. I would have bought it anyway, but there you go. So there's disc 1 and disc 2. This may have been one of the first double CDs I bought that wasn't in one of the thick CD cases. This is the booklet itself. It's just got various pictures of the band on stage and individual shots of each member. Now, what's odd about this is for some reason it was never issued on vinyl. I don't think this was issued on vinyl anywhere in the world. And I also got this. Got this as a Yankee swap gift actually a few years ago. A few like backstage pass type things, and this just happened to be from this tour because they actually went on tour to support this live album. Okay, the fourth and final of the Sammy Hagar studio albums with Van Halen came out in 1995 is Balance. I actually saw them on this tour. This is a Canadian edition on Warner Brothers. A much darker album. I still liked it though. I just was way into all of the Hagar albums. There's the disc itself, got like a Da Vinci thing going on. No idea how the band was not getting along at this point. They kept that well hidden for about a year. Just pictures, credits, lyrics, in the right order, I might add. If you want to look way, way, way back at Tim's Vinyl Confessions, I did an episode where I went through my tour books. I haven't updated that one because tour books are kind of a thing of the past, unfortunately. But one of the tour books I show is the Balance tour book. And I'm not done with that era just yet. I also have very few CD singles. This is one that I have. It's for Can't Stop Lovin' You. The biggest hit that came from Balance, in all honesty. This is a European CD single. And the main reason that I have, the only reason I bothered getting this, is because it has a non-LP track called Crossing Over. There are very few Van Halen B-sides. And this is one recorded for the Balance album. At one time I had the cassette single that also had this on it. It's also got live versions of Right Now and Man on a Mission that came from the Right Here, Right Now album. So 1996, very tumultuous year for Van Halen. Sammy Hagar's out, David Lee Roth is ever so briefly back in, and in the middle of it all, Warner Brothers puts out Best of Van Halen Volume 1. This is a US edition on Warner Brothers. I was a little miffed at the time. I was a huge fan of the Hagar era. Loved the Dave stuff back then, but I just didn't understand, but it was just unfortunate. I just didn't see it happening because they just put out Humans Being, which is a great tune from the Twister soundtrack, and next thing you know, Sammy's out, and then David Lee Roth did that disastrous appearance at the MTV Awards that year, and they distanced themselves from him. Anyway, so this came out, and it's still a good single disc representation, about half and half of the Hagar and Roth eras. But what makes it the most valuable is it does contain the song Humans Being, which is only on the Twister soundtrack up until then, and 2 new songs with Roth, Can't Get This Stuff No More, which is a decent tune, and Me Wise Magic, which in my opinion is an excellent tune, and it's the one that got me thinking, well, okay, if they stick together, they might be able to put out a decent record. As it turns out, that wasn't going to happen right then. That's the disc itself, one of Eddie's guitars. all of the albums to that point and all the songs on them, and kind of a cool shot of their rehearsal space. Now what's notable, I mean, it's most Van Halen fans know they've kind of stuck it to Mike Anthony and given him the short shrift for many years. That's the rehearsal space. There's no bass here. It's all guitars. I think Mike Anthony was a vital part of Van Halen in his bass playing, but mostly his background vocals. So I'll skip ahead about 4 years, but it is related to this album because Warner Brothers did put this out on VHS, and I've got a DVD copy here of Video Hits Volume 1. Now, this does not match the song lineup on the CD. Of course, it starts with Jump. Apparently they didn't want to pay any royalties. There's no covers on here. Now, as any Van Halen fan knows, there were videos for Running with the Devil, for You Really Got Me. They even did a very bizarre one for Loss of Control, Pretty Woman. So Jump was not their first video. But so because of that, it's pretty heavy on Hagar stuff. It doesn't have all of the Sammy era videos either, like Feels So Good isn't on here, for instance. Nothing from 5150. I mean, they were just live clips from the Live Without a Net video, but they were broken up and released to video stations as videos. And it's even got, because this came out after 1996, it's got Without You from Van Halen 3 with Gary Cherone. So it's probably rare. You probably can't get this. Can't get this stuff no more as it goes. There's the disc itself, and just the same smoking guitar that's inside the CD. Van Halen 3, you say? Well, let's talk about that. 1998, this album came out. And I will say this, if Will's watching, I am warming to this album. It's really not that bad. It was just different at the time. This was the album with Gary Cherone from Extreme on vocals, the one album that they did in this lineup. The lineup definitely had potential, but overall I think it was just a bad match, and it was not successful. I do remember a limited edition of this coming out that looked like a pillbox or something. That I settled for the standard CD version. This is another one that I do not think was ever put out on vinyl. It kind of had like a bit of a circus theme going on with the cover. And the lyrics to all the songs are in here too. And that was it for many years. It was very silent in the Van Halen camp. 2004, an unexpected thing happened, just as unexpected as it was that Hagar was out. All of a sudden he was back in for a reunion tour. And to celebrate that, they put this out, The Best of Both Worlds. This is a 2 CD set of, just as it says, The Best of Van Halen. And this pretty much has all of their hit singles on it. There's really nothing missing. However, I will say that the pacing is suspect. We'll get into that in a second. There were 3 new songs on this with Hagar. It's About Time's a good song. Up for Breakfast is kind of silly, and Learning to See is one of, it's a ballad, but you know, It's About Time was the best of the 3 in my opinion. Now, they do mix up the eras, and the truth of the matter is even though I'm a fan of both the David Lee Roth and the Sammy Hagar lineups, there's nothing from Gary Cherone on here. They really were 2 different bands with the same name, let's face it. There was a completely different mindset. They really should have put disc 1 with Dave's stuff and disc 2 with Sammy, because it is weird to go from Dreams to Hot for Teacher to Pound Cake to And the Cradle Will Rock, Black and Blue, Jump, Top of the World. Like I like it all, but I think for the average fan, they should have divided them up. Anyway, for a while, it seemed as if this lineup was back together. It was not to last. Sammy goes in that in much detail in his autobiography, Red. And somewhere in here, there's a booklet that came with this. A write-up from David Wilde in Rolling Stone, which is odd because Rolling Stone wasn't particularly a Van Halen-friendly periodical. Again, Mike Anthony got the short end of the stick on this. And then there was nothing from Van Halen for a long, long time. 2007, they did reunite with Dave for a tour. In 2012, there had been rumors of a new Van Halen album coming out literally since the year 2000. But in 2012, they finally got it together. Wolfgang Van Halen is in on bass, Eddie's son, and this comes out, A Different Kind of Truth. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was all ready to hate this album. I really was. I ended up loving it. I still think it's really, really good. This came out on Interscope, distributed by Universal, so they weren't on Warner Brothers for once in their career. And this is a Canadian edition. It's a deluxe edition, and what's deluxe about it is that it's got the album proper, but then it's got a 3-song DVD. I really, really like this. A lot of this album is old Van Halen songs from way back in their archive, sometimes rewritten with different lyrics, but they put together a good sounding album, and I was all about it. I was way, way into this. And if this ends up being the last Van Halen studio album, I'm kind of all right with that. I think they went out on a good note. There is one more thing to talk about. They have done one last tour so far, and that was back in 2015. And to promote the tour, they put this bizarre live album out, Tokyo Dome Live in Concert. I say bizarre for a lot of reasons. The Van Halen camp seems to do things that are just strange. For one thing, this is not a good sounding album. Dave's vocals live were never great. I don't care what you say. Even in their prime, Dave was more of a showman. And if they were going to put this out, they're one of the few bands I can think of that didn't bother filming it. This didn't come out on DVD or Blu-ray, and it should have. And to buy this on record, it's like $100. They make such strange decisions. And that $100 included copies of the first record and 1984, the 2 Van Halen albums that the casual fan already owned, and certainly a diehard fan, the only ones that are ever going to buy this on vinyl. I'm getting off topic here. Anyway, that just didn't make any sense. So it looks like a good song lineup. It's a good, strong song lineup, but I've listened to this maybe twice. I'm just not a big fan of it, but being a fan, of course, I had to have it, because I'm just like that. And there is a booklet that came with this. For some reason, it's got the lyrics to all the songs, even though it's a live album. But to be fair, a lot of those early albums didn't print the lyrics, so that's the first time they've actually been published officially. So there you go, that's a look at my Van Halen CD collection. Have you got any rare Van Halen CDs, any rare issues of them? Would love to see them. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.